So we had a busy month again. It seems to be busy around here all the time. On August 14th, Laurie Davis Hill and I met with some officials from the City of Hamilton who are dealing with public health issues and how we could work together on some of those things. And that evening I was in Brantford at Phil McColman's Hockey Night in Brantford, which is a fundraising event he holds on an annual basis. We had a couple of players from our area. Brandon Montour was playing from the Buffalo Sabres, as well as Cam Salt. On August 15th, at the invitation of the president, Guerin Ferron, I visited Brock University and had a meeting and a tour, and we were joined by the new vice provost there, who is our own Amos Key. So that was wonderful. And later in the day, I also met with an official from the city of Mississauga who wanted to talk about their land use plans and learning more about our history. On the 16th, I joined Mayor Kevin Davis from the city of Brantford, Mayor David Bailey from Brant County, MP Phil McColman, and MPP Will Bouma in a lunch. Over the past year, we've agreed to come together on a quarterly basis just to have lunch and catch up on stuff. Councillor Carl Hill and myself and then some staff then headed to Ottawa for the Association of Municipalities of Ontario annual conference. This was held on August 19th, 20th, and 21st, and a lot of the mayors from across the province were there, along with all of the Ontario cabinet ministers. And the highlight of that is being able to secure meetings with these different cabinet ministers, and I must say we secured quite a few of them. We met with the Minister of Finance and the Attorney General. We talked to them about gaming, and we talked about cannabis. We talked to the Solicitor General, Sylvia Jones, talked about justice and about the pending closing of the Hamilton Forensic Unit. We also met briefly with the Minister of Municipal Affairs to talk about exemption to property tax on land that we acquire back. The Minister of Infrastructure, and of course Greg Rickford, who's the Minister of Energy, and the Indigenous Services Minister. We were also joined forces with Mayor Ken Hewitt from Haldimand to meet with the Minister of Transportation to talk about, some of the joint things that we can support, such as the bridge in Argyle Street in Caledonia is being fixed up, and we want to be accommodated for that. And Mayor Hewitt was looking for a rumble strip down Highway 6. He's also looking for maybe possible ramps onto this Highway 6 overpass off of 6 line. So, we had short meetings, but we put the word out there and got commitments from them to have further meetings. So that was a good week for us. On the 23rd, I was at the gathering place for the graduation for the early learners, the kids that are in the Stone Ridge and Bicentennial Early Learning Centers, or the daycares. It was so wonderful to see these young guys graduate and moving on to the big schools, to senior kindergarten and junior kindergarten. So congrats to all those little grads. On August 24th, I was at the Miles to Go Cancer Support Group. They had their annual walk. And then off to Toronto the last week of August. On the 27th, I was at a Chiefs Committee on Housing. We're working directly, or trying to work directly with Headquarters Indian Affairs to get housing funding directly to Ontario without going through AFN, whatever they're doing, or else being held back by other regions in the country. Councillors Helen Miller and Audrey Paulus Bombardy were in Toronto at the same day at a committee at the Chiefs of Ontario and meeting with government officials to talk about us getting exemption to the carbon tax. So those talks are continuing as well. On the 28th, I was in a conference call with chiefs from other Haudenosaunee communities, or the elected councils, and members of the Iroquois Caucus, and we were talking with Public Safety Canada on establishing a working group to deal with some of the issues related to border crossing, where hopefully we can make some policy changes. And further to my meeting with the Solicitor General about the Hamilton Forensic Unit, she had arranged for me to speak with the Ontario coroner, which I did on August 29th. He informed me that this was an operational decision and that the unit will be closed in July 2020, and that autopsies and other things that they do will have to be done in Toronto. So we're going to continue to work with him to make sure that our needs are still satisfactory. Later that day, the Minister of Education for the province, Stephen Lecce, visited the STEAM Academy at the Polytech campus in Brantford, and I was invited to come along and meet with him and join them in his tour. And on the last day, August 30th, Janice Montour, the Director of Tourism, and myself and our SAO met with Barry Wright, who is the CEO of the Canada Summer Games that will take place in the Niagara region in 2021. He was here with his team to talk about the games, give us an update, and we showed him around, and we talked about how Six Nations can get involved in those games, both culturally and maybe hosting some events or tours here. So that'll continue because that's a couple of years away. On the 3rd of September, I was back at Brock to take part in the social they held for a part of the orientation week for the Indigenous students. It was well attended, and Cam Hill was there singing with some crew. And on the 5th, I was in Toronto along with Nanda Garlow, who's the chair of the Cannabis Commission, and Councillor Audrey Paulus-Bombury, to meet with the provincial government representatives and the federal to talk about how our cannabis law can harmonize with theirs. So those discussions will continue. It turned into an exciting evening the rest of the day because I was there for the opening gala of the Toronto International Film Festival. The premier film shown was Once We're Brothers, Robbie Robertson and the Band. And it was a documentary about Robbie Robertson. And I was so honored to be there. I was invited to walk the red carpet and to make welcoming remarks at the opening of the gala. And I got to see spend some time with Robbie and meet some of the other people that were there. The producers of the documentary were the Academy Award winners, Martin Scorsese, Ron Howard, and Brian Glazer. They were all there. And the director of the documentary was a young man by the name of Daniel Rohr, who's only 26 years old. So it was a fantastic evening and a great tribute and honor to Robbie Robertson, and I was thrilled to be a part of it. We then had our fall fair here at Six Nations, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and congratulations to the ambassadors. Miss Six Nations is the new Miss Six Nations, Valeria McKay. The Miss Teen, the Miss Preteen, the Miss Mini, the Little Miss. Congratulations to all the girls. It was a wonderful job. And also congratulations to Mark Kill, who is the chair of the Fair Board, and all of the community members who volunteered their time to put on a pretty good fair this year. David Wilcox was there. He had a record crowd of people that came out to hear him. And then I met with him before, and he informed me that he wanted to make a donation back to our community of $1,000 for the youth or one of the programs here. So, and he's already followed up on that. So we're going to receive that soon, and then we'll allocate it. So it was wonderful. I thought it was a really good fair, I think. Unfortunately, I was unable to be at two other events that were happening at the same time that I had been invited to, but I do want to mention, and it was CKRZ had a stage at the Southside Shuffle Blues Festival in Mississauga, and it was featuring a number of Six Nations artists. That was on Saturday, September 7th, and then during the weekend as well, there was a celebration of nations that was held in St. Catharines. I also, on September 9th, had met with a lady from Toronto Council Fire who's doing some work on the missing and murdered Indigenous women. And on the 10th, myself and some of the staff met with Bell Canada officials about some of the lands that they lease here for their equipment. So those talks will continue. On the 11th, Mike Schreiner, who is the leader of the Ontario Green Party, was here to meet with me and to just talk about, so how can they help us in any of our issues. So that was a good talk with him. I also had a talk that day with a community relations officer from Air Canada. They want to figure out how they can do more with Indigenous communities and Indigenous people. And on the 12th, I attended a planning session at Ganokosha with our Embrace Her with Love families who have been involved in the whole missing and murdered Indigenous women movement. And we're planning a huge vigil here in our community on October 4th. So please save that date. We want the community to come out and involve to support the families, but also to give the message out to prevent violence in our community. And we'll get more information on that once the details are finalized. And then again, of course, we had the information session with Jeremy on the day school settlements, and I think there's a request to have more, so we'll get more information on that if we have another one.